Is that really the cicadas or somebody turning water on and off?
That is the cicadas.
That's crazy. It's like, sounds like water going on and off. Hello, my faithful friends and followers. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Ain't Gonna Be No Stupid. I am here again with another former student. And I say that with such pride, but also a colleague of mine who I see walking the halls now daily at Oak Lawn High School. So Matt was a great student of mine in American Studies, and I don't know if I had to for anything else, but I know he also is a theater coach. There's a state award-winning theater. Matt pours his soul into that, and it's an honor. I'm now teaching drama again, so we have a lot of similarities here. So I asked him to be a guest back in June. We just never got around to it, and here we are. So we are now here. We're going to decide it on the title, Ain't Gonna Stifle Student Voices. And if you know either of us, you know that we're all about making sure people's voices get heard, because we ain't going to kill their spirit either, which I think is a big detriment, and not only in schools and education, but also in society. So Matt, if you have anything else to say before we get into our innocent story, let me know.
Not really. I mean, I just, you were also my freshman year English teacher. I was lucky to have you as one of my, main subject people to introduce me to high school. And
Nice.
I mean, that's the whole reason I took American Studies. And, I really liked the way you, I felt like you always uplifted kids. And, even if it was I remember even as a young age, seeing you just really, really be enthusiastic about really what everyone presented and put forth. And I mean, you really made our work feel like it had worth in it.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because I think we go into our stupid innocent story, I think it's because I am like that. I think because of my own voice being stifled throughout my lifetime. And even my sister just sent me something via text saying she's doing an artist way kind of a book right now with a group of women and try to dive into her artistic self. And she knows that I grew up in a home that wasn't truly embracing of my divergent thinking. They didn't really know what to do with me. And as a result of that, I pretty much shut down. I did fine academically, but I now am understanding I did fine just because I was more compliant, and I just kind of shut down. And I see so much of that. I think it's such an epidemic in the school system, that these kids are just shut down and they have so much more potential and so many more ways to soar. So if you can get into an innocent story, I mean, it could be as recent as yesterday or anything that you thought was cool at the time or whatever.
All right, this is more about the innocence. Now, it's one of my favorite stories to tell. Something that happened to me as a child. My aunt was getting married in Las Vegas. I was 8 years old at the time, so that was 21 years ago. So we went to go see, just walk around the tiger exhibit from the Siegfried and Roy thing. And being an inquisitive kid and always loving nature, I was, of course, going up to read that plaque to give me all the information about that thing, that tiger that we were seeing. So as I walk up to read this plaque, I'm reading, and this tiger gets up, turns around, lifts its tail, and then sprays me with that marking spray that they spray to mark their territory. And I very vividly remember it's those moments where it feels like time stops with embarrassment. And I just remember everyone laughing, and I feel so embarrassed, and like, oh, it just totally ruined my mood. So I don't know, I just being very present and, being very like, feeling just like unsupported by everyone around you in that moment. Of course, hilarious to them. If I would have seen it, I would have thought the same. But, I guess that kind of puts me in that mindset of what we're talking about today, though, is like, I mean, I'm not saying, all these kids feel like they're getting covered in tiger urine.
Right.
But metaphorically, I mean, you're put on you're embarrassed.
That is a wild story. Is it similar to like getting sprayed by a skunk? Because that's happened to me before, and you had to go in tomato juice to get rid of the smell.
I don't think, I mean, it was pretty pungent. I mean, and luckily there was some bars and I wasn't like covered, but I mean, like that, I mean, just, it was pretty bad. I definitely had to go like wash it off. It took a while, but yeah, I mean.
Well, even as a theater coach, I even said this today in drama class, you have to be willing to fall flat on your face. The more mistakes you make, it's not about always being funny. The comedy comes in the truth in the moment. And that's the beauty of falling flat on your face. So when you made a mistake just now, that was great for us. I know it might not have felt good for you, but that's what you got to get used to as somebody who's on the stage, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Once again, if I was, I mean, I'm older now. I can look back on it, and if I knew now what I knew then, I probably would have started laughing too. Because what a once in a lifetime experience of it's so wild. But I would appreciate the humor in that now, and I probably wouldn't feel so embarrassed, thinking back, if it happened to me now. But I don't know.
Right. I love that story. Oh my gosh. How about this then? Let's transition into our stupid situationship before we get into our main dish. Can you think of a stupid situationship that relates to our topic a bit? Anything to do with your voice being stifled or?
I mean, we spent almost 2 years of students literally stifling their voices with a lot of online learning, and even without realizing that their voices were being stifled. So I feel like that is something that, I mean, we can relate to our students, our coworkers, things like that.
Yes.
As best we try, and I know, there are some kids who that format worked, but for a lot of them, they just didn't know how to, express themselves.
Yes.
They had so much to hide behind.
That is so true. And I'm thinking even now with our masks, how we actually have to project our voice more to be heard. And I don't know, everybody's so willing to do that, but it is weird. Like even the smile has been stifled. And if you don't smile with your eyes, people don't really even know that you're smiling. But that used to be one of my superpowers, a smile on the face, talking to the kids. And now it's just like, wait a minute, you can't even see my smile.
No, I mean, as someone whose eyes are generally kind of closed all the time,
Yeah.
I always hope, and I think about it every day when I walk through the halls. I've got my mask on, it's over my nose, and over covering my whole face. But I hope that even
Yes.
you can move a little bit,
The
and I hope
cheeks.
attention. You know what I mean? For those who have to speak up because they're wearing a mask, those people might not be used to even speaking at that volume about anything in their life.
Exactly.
So it is now forcing them to step out of their comfort zone to do so.
Yeah.
Because I think it's also important. Whenever kids talk, and I always say, because I was a security guard in a music venue, and I've been going to concerts and all that stuff for years and years. But I got a little bit of hard of hearing now, as I've gotten older. So I ask kids all the time. I say, speak up. I can only listen to you if you speak up.
Right.
That statement right there has power too. But a lot of those kids don't know how to speak up. Not so much figurative, more figuratively, of course.
Yeah.
But you just even get them talking. I mean, one of our exercises we do with speech is we just, we try to get them to we do the line louder and louder and louder. I mean, there is, emotional power, physical power with like the heightening of volume,
Yeah.
Because of these, stupid little black boxes in our pockets all the time.
I know.
We don't always get to even express that. We're a ding or a 10-second clip of a song, and that's all then we're just words on paper pretty much.
Which, by the way, has been very empowering for me with the writing and finding your voice as a writer, and then reading the writing has been the first 5 days we've been doing a little bit of that, and boy, that's been some powerful experience. And you found your voice on the page. Someone now is reading it. Oh, gee, I do have a voice without even having to speak. So that's another way to do it. I got to say something else too. I think the cicadas are out this year. Are they out this year? Because I'm starting to hear that. So if you're hearing any kind of noise, it sounds like water. It just means that cicadas are out. And I guess they come every, how many years do they come?
There's a couple. Some come every 17. Some come every like 3. There's a few by me too. So if you're hearing any, that's what you're hearing. So
yeah, that's okay. I want to get now into the main dish if I can. I want to read a little poem by Langston Hughes. I want to talk about misdiagnoses and dual diagnoses with gifted children and learning disabled. Then we want to get into something more with elevating student voices at school and just in general and allyship and things like that. So let me read this poem because this kind of reminded me of this book I'm reading called Misdiagnosis. And I've been reading it since the spring. It's about dual diagnosis of gifted children and people with ADHD, bipolar, OCD, Asperger's, depression, and other disorders. We could do a whole season on this book. It's brilliant. But let me read this poem by Langston Hughes. Genius Child. This is a song for the genius child. Sing it softly, for the song is wild. Sing it softly as ever you can, lest the song get out of hand. Nobody loves a genius child. Can you love an eagle, tame or wild? Can you love an eagle, wild or tame? Can you love a monster of frightening name? Nobody loves a genius child. Kill him and let his soul run wild. What do you think of that one?
I mean, that is very much, I mean, sometimes what I feel like happens to kids who, they fall through the cracks, or they're high. I mean, you can get the adverse effect from glorifying something like that too much. I think that's why he's saying at the end, like, kill them and let their soul run free, because sometimes people can see something in a student, maybe they're testing well, or back in my day, we weren't always focused on that social emotional aspect. And it was like, oh my gosh, you're gifted. Well, you're in this, you're doing this, and this. And
Right.
the expect, we don't ask ourselves, is that too much of a burden for them to carry?
Right.
Are they capable of carrying it?
Right. And that expectation of, we find out you're gifted and we grab you by the neck and we go, oh, you need to do all of these things excellent. There's no room for error. Perfectionism runs rampant. Their anxiety goes up. We got to remember to remind the kids to take care of yourself. Please don't try to be perfect. Please don't try to overdo it. But again, teachers have that same disease as well. That perfectionist spirit is killer, because they have to measure us. You have to get an excellent and the things that you have to do. And to me, it's just not worth that stress. But let me say, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing.
Let me say the three things that came from this book too. Of the three students that they label as gifted, they either label them as, they could either be either number one, gifted and undiagnosed learning disability. So an example would be like a lack of motivation, or they have poor self-concept, or they say that they're unmotivated to write, or they lack confidence. That could be a learning disability for a gifted student. Secondly, they have gifted students with severe learning disabilities, but are highly gifted elsewhere. I often think of the student that isn't like quote unquote book smart, they say, or they're very gifted at something to do with their hands or something like that. The trades and that sort of thing. But then it says here, they might even lack depth perception, but they have really good visual spatial skills. But we don't recognize their giftedness because we focus too much on the disability. And the third group, they say, this is where the majority of students lie. Their learning disability masks their giftedness. They're labeled as average. They're performing fine, but they also are performing below their potential. But there's a lot I just gave you there. But I think that the gifted students, they say here, they don't fit into the typical interventions. And I know I teach classes, 3 co-talk classes, and I just find that there's those students that are labeled with the LD, they can do some really cool divergent thinking when you give them the freedom to go beyond the structural things that the expectations of school is asking them to do, right? They go beyond the rubric, above the A, and people say, oh, they didn't follow directions, therefore they're not. That is one of my biggest pet peeves. They went beyond. It was brilliant, but we can't measure it because it's not on the list of whatever it is we are looking for, right?
Yeah.
So that to me kills their spirit. And that as a result, then that's when they shut down. So let's get into the next point, which is this elevating student voices in education, and how we really need to provide opportunities for students to get involved at the decision-making level, policies, and not be the adults in the building that are the leaders and the saviors that are going to give the answers to the kids, but that we are their ally. Can you speak more about allyship?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, working, in the rooms that I do, and things like that, certain students need, advocates for them. They're not able to, always best represent themselves. I'm not saying I know everything that's best for them, because, they don't, who does?
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes, they might not, be able to stand up for themselves in, many different ways. So I don't know. I think that quote that we're kind of dancing around, I know we both love so much from the article we're talking about, is, being an ally for students and not their leader,
Yes.
We need to work with them.
Yes. Yes. Talk to them on a level that they're your equal. Even though you're the adult, it doesn't mean you have to talk down to them. And that's one of, I know, our biggest pet peeves as people, right? I think our staff has done a lot of groundbreaking work when it comes to social emotional learning and things like that. But I think that, I don't know, some adults really know how to take off that I am the power in the room and you are below me kind of a tone, when I don't think you get very far when it comes to that kind of a spirit in the room, right?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that takes a certain type of vulnerability that just some people are not comfortable with. I mean, I know
Yeah.
I could speak for you, I think, but I think you and I are comfortable enough to, we share that, and we know that we have to break down, these walls, you know what I mean, that separate us from, our student success, which would be, our ego, our, that position of power people think they get because they're
Yeah.
an educator or whatever. I mean, that's not what it is. I mean, don't forget who we serve, and that's the children.
Yes, we're there as servants. That's what I think of it too. If you think of a restaurant, we're there to serve them, right? And I know being vulnerable is the most powerful tool you can have. And you don't have to tell them all their dirty deeds of your life, but there's
Oh,
some moments where you can share. I do struggle with that too. And they're like, what? And then, you kind of get the cocked head and they're like, oh, I didn't know that you are human too, So I think it's very important to do that, isn't it?
yeah, all the time. I mean, there's many times where we could wag our finger at kids and go, "Well, make good decisions." It's like, well, what? They don't know. Like, I mean, it's not, and they also need to see us fail too.
Yes, yes.
We cannot be put on a pedestal to just constantly tower over as they live in our
Serious.
shadow and try to gain whatever they can. No, we have to come off the pedestal, look them eye to eye,
Yes.
and go, what do you need? And I don't mean what do you need based on a piece of paper in a file cabinet in the back of an office. I
Right.
mean, what do you need right now today in this class?
Yes. That's good. That's good. No, really. And that's something we can easily give them, usually what they need. But they haven't really been able to taught self-advocacy, right? Or self-efficacy. Um, but even just something as simple as they're sitting there doing nothing and they doing nothing. Why? Because they don't have a pencil. They don't even know enough to ask for a pencil or know enough to go find a pencil in the back of the room or something like that. So we kind of have to work with them on that.
And and some people might think that's overbearing, but I mean, they might be afraid not to ask it. I mean, I even had the mindset, other people do it's like, oh, well, they can't afford a pen, they don't have a pencil, they don't have a pencil in my class. Well, and I maybe 5, 6 years ago, I asked a student, why do you not have a pencil? I was frustrated. I've been giving them one every day, and
I know.
and they looked at me and they said, I can't afford it.
Mm,
I mean, and I'll never forget that.
yeah.
And it's not even about asking those direct questions. It's you have to be making these constant observations.
Mm-hmm.
We study their behaviors, on a good day, a bad day, or they feel off. I mean, what do you do? Do you just? I mean, I know I can guess what you and I would do, but I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are just left to their own devices.
Yeah.
They're screaming for help without saying a word. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny you even use the word devices because I was going to bring in that we now are using devices, one-to-one iPads. We don't even need a pencil usually, except for certain activities that we do. I actually just got some golf pencils and the ones without the eraser. So I got the eraser. So that's going to be my free pencils. And if they want to take them, they take them, right? Whatever. But I do like here in that one article about deepening student voice and empowerment, how they had a superintendent that would have meetings in the school and everyone invited, and they would have an open mic to share your grievances or share your frustrations. But as a school, getting more students involved, that the whole population that represents all students, as opposed to what we think as adults the students need. We really need to hear from all kinds of students, especially the ones getting in fights, I think, in the cafeteria.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always joke. I said I love working with all kids. Not get me wrong, but I said I like working with the bad kids.
I know. Why is that? Why do we understand them more? Because we understand a voice that's being stifled, right? And having to put me in a box, and I don't fit in that box. And why are you trying to make me walk this walk? So I think that's why we feel that way for those kids.
Yeah, I mean, we are instantly able to look past so much, and that
Yeah.
starts with us not going, well, you're the student, I'm the teacher, and
Right.
I've got to be better than you. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right. You know what? Going back to Tiger story, I think a lot of teachers do that tiger urine thing to their students because they're afraid. And the students just want to read the plaque that's hanging there. And then they rear their ugly head and go, why are you da, 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 da. It's like, hold on a second. You might not have got some sleep last night, teacher. You might got some other things going on in your life, but that doesn't give you any right to act that way. And that's a cycle that needs to be broken.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, and I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just really about the approach, and I mean, there's kids all the time where, like, I get it. This kid is difficult, but
Yeah,
are we asking why they're difficult? Have you talked to this person?
exactly.
It's not enough, like I said, for a file in the back of a room in a cabinet. I mean, it's what's going on right now.
Exactly.
There's one kid, and I was like, he was having a lot of trouble, and it was like, well, I'm working this long, and I've got to take care of my mom, and and it's all this, and I mean, all I really did was ask him. I didn't get mad at him, and he was
Right.
off. I didn't give him an
Mm-hmm.
attention. I didn't send him to the dean. I just said, like, what's going on? Like, we got to
Yeah.
talk about. I got to talk to you like an adult, because it seems like you're going through some adult problems right now.
Yes, that's a lot of it. Yeah. I had a kid that yesterday was kind of like snapping a little bit. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I had to work till 1 a.m. I'm so tired. I'm like, that's it. That's it. If I don't get my sleep, I feel the same way,
Oh,
right? Oh, here's a suggested activity that I wrote down. About what to do with the identify. What group do you identify with? This came from the article Deepening Student Voice and Empowerment. And it says that if we give them more spaces for them to disrupt the inequities in the school and empower them to create solutions, we definitely help them with their moral and ethical clarity. They actually have more moral and ethical clarity than adults at this point. They're not as desensitized to the problems of the world. And as a result of that, they're able to truly find creative solutions. So one activity they suggested was take groups they identify with, and then they go walk over to the group that you identify with most, and then which identity do others see first, and which identity do others not see, and what identity do you want to learn more about? So that, I think, would be a really powerful activity to do in this. We did a 5 days unit 0. I didn't even get this article until today, but I'm loving that suggestion about, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, once again, just because the unit 0 is over, I mean, unit 0 should be the start of every class. It should be
Yes, yes.
and and it's not just a heartless Google form. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. It's pretty much should be woven into the fabric of what we do every day, right? Yeah, I think so too. So I'll put that article in the notes. I think that was a good one, Deepening Student Voice and Empowerment. Because if you can empower people as opposed to squelch or stifle their voice, you're not gonna have an out of control, willy-nilly, everyone's voices, everyone's screaming. It's going to be less fighting. There'll be less stress because somebody has actually heard us, right? I know you and I can definitely relate to that.
absolutely. That does remind me of a quote that I have from the edtopia.org article about empowering student voices through classroom culture. It says, empowering student voices transforms a learner into being an observer to an initiator.
I love that.
Which, I really enjoyed that quote specifically because I feel like that, I mean, for the base scale of a lot of school interactions with kids. It's, you know, I mean, you know, there's someone up there and they're sitting where they're sitting, and it's just a lot of watching, you know what I mean? And I mean, that's the thing, to really initiate, to, you know, they should be coming to you, and, you know, if they're really initiated, saying, I don't like the way this is in this book or this story, or you know, this thing we're covering right now.
Yes.
This is how I feel. Not waiting to be prompted to do so.
Yes, I love that when somebody comes out and just says something that you feel is like off the wall, but it's brilliant and it's not in the lesson plan. That's when the lesson is like the best, when somebody has the courage to just speak their mind. And if we can continue to foster that, speak your mind. It's important to be heard. Even if we don't agree, does not make it invalid. You know, if I say one final thought before we close, what would you say?
One final thought would be to help lift up student voices. We need to be able to willingly and knowingly look past ourselves. And I mean, even those who think we're doing it, you know, you and I, there is still much more that even we can do to continue to foster and learn and understand these environments, because, you know, you can't get these kids to share if they don't feel comfortable.
Exactly.
And if there are walls built up around you that they can't access, to a degree, of course, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
Power of, you know, that power wall they were talking about, you know, they won't feel comfortable.
I love that. I love that. Don't be that lion spraying urine all over the kids. And truly, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. And I think you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck, right? Thanks, Matt, for talking about student voice. You're definitely someone who's an advocate for kids. I know this firsthand, and I appreciate you for taking the time to be a part of this program.
Oh, no problem. It was truly my pleasure, Amy.
Thank you so much. Okay. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Bye.